I'm a fan of Noodler's inks. However, I find that when I write with Noodler's Bulletproof Black and erase it with a regular eraser, after it's dried of course, the shade of ink turns very light, almost grayish. All right, and that's all I got. So I'm assuming your question is like, what's up with that? This is all you gave me here, but that's all right. This can happen with some papers. Given the fact that you're erasing over top of a fountain pen, like most people don't do that on a regular basis. So it could be that it's just you got some pencil mixed in on your writing or whatever, but usually what I see with people in your situation, I'm having to make some assumptions here, Sebastian. So forgive me if this is not the exact situation that you're in, but I'm going to speak very broadly here about the situation here that I find most people are in with this type of thing. So most people end up using Noodler's Black because it's known as kind of like one of the most permanent blacks out there, sure, and it is. But most people who go to use it on watercolor paper or some very heavily sized, heavily coated paper end up running into this kind of situation. So typically if you're dealing with any type of sketching or drawing or anything like that, you might sketch out in pencil, go over top it with fountain pen, you wait for the ink to dry, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and then you erase away the pencil, which of course when you're doing that, you're naturally erasing over top of the ink as well. And then you notice, oh my gosh, the ink is rubbing away. What's up with that? I thought this was supposed to be the most permanent ink, blah, 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 Noodler's lied, all these things. Okay, well, yes and no. So the thing is, with Noodler's ink specifically, it attains its permanence through cellulose reaction. So basically, the ink has to bond to the cellulosic fibers in the paper, which if you've got a cotton paper or a wood pulp-based paper, great. You know, if you're dealing with some type of synthetic paper, I guess, or like a stone paper or something like that, ain't gonna do well. It's gotta bond to cellulose. So if you have a cellulose-based paper, you know, like, you know, most watercolor paper is cellulose-based. However, because it's so heavily sized, it's actually protected. So it's really good at resisting feathering and bleed through and buckling and stuff like that, because it's usually thick paper, very heavily coated. So you can do like watercolor and mixed media and acrylic and stuff like that over top of it. However, with this specific example of fountain pen ink that needs to absorb down into the paper to attain its full permanence, it's a setback. So it usually takes several days for Noodler's Black and other various Noodler's inks to penetrate fully enough into the paper that's heavily sized like that to attain its full permanence. So if you're not waiting that long and going back over and erasing, and so for some cases, depending on how heavily sized it is, it may never fully penetrate in there even. So, you know, I'll just kind of leave that little disclaimer out, just in case somebody's got some random paper out there is like, it didn't, I waited 5 days and it still didn't do it, Brian, you doofus, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, that could be very well be the case. I don't do a lot of watercolor myself, but I've talked to a lot of people that do. So anyway, I can't believe I call myself a doofus. That's really random. But anyway, so yes, if you're in that situation, try waiting a little bit longer. You know, it doesn't really cause any harm to do that, you know, just as an experiment. I fully understand, though, if ongoing, that waiting 3 to 5 days in between, you know, doing this activity is not practical for you. I would fully understand that. However, this is why so many artists that I know love platinum carbon black. Platinum carbon black is a deep, dark black that flows nicely and everything. It's a pigmented ink, though. It's not a dye-based ink. The difference is with carbon black versus Noodler's Black, carbon black dries on the surface of the paper, so it doesn't need to penetrate down into the fibers in order to attain its permanence. So a lot of artists like it because you can put it down, it dries relatively quickly, and then it gets its full permanence quicker on these papers, these watercolor papers and things like that. So it's a better ink for artists than just regular Noodler's Black is, which is mainly made for writers, okay? So hopefully that can help you out. Try waiting a little bit. If it works for you with that method, great. If it doesn't, platinum carbon black will be your key to success.